Every woman needs to take that universal path to find self-worth, a voice, and a cherished life. That path is the heroine's journey, the roadmap to an amazing adventure that women travel to discover their true selves. The heroine's journey is not about getting on your superpowers and going out to fight the lions, tigers, and bears of the outside world with your might. That would be the hero's journey. This woman's journey is the internal journey that a woman takes to grow her courage and strength and travel to her best life.
Heroines, so glad you're here. And I've got exciting news. The Heroine's Journey book is out and for you. It's going to show you how your life can move along so beautifully and gracefully. Go get the book now at heroinesbook.com. Journey onward. Hey, Erin.
Hey, Joan, TGIF.
Yeah, and you had a really cool coffee cup.
I did. I should show it off here.
I think you should.
It's a beautiful coffee cup that holds I want to say half a liter, but it's a traditional Bulgarian design. And I got it actually in specifically Bulgaria. So I'm very proud of it.
It's beautiful. And you had such a cool one. I had to go get a cool one.
Yes.
Let's see if I can show this.
She is fierce. I love it.
Or in heroine terms, we say fierce feminine.
Yes, exactly.
Very appropriate. Mm-hmm.
But fierce just sounds like a feminine word for some reason.
It does. It's fierce to me means some form of control.
Okay.
But obvious boundaries and conviction and strength.
Yeah.
I like fierce feminine. It kind of says I'm the mama lion and don't mess with me.
Exactly. That's kind of that's how the word feels to me too.
Mm-hmm. And which is opposed to kind of a male version, which is a assault.
Yeah.
Fierce feminine to me is just kind of it's not aggressively moving forward. It's more like standing firmly in who and what you are.
It sounds like a powerful word without all the muscle and flexing.
Or blood from a weapon.
Blood. Yeah.
So I have an amazing question for you today.
Ooh, baby, bring it on.
Yeah. The amazing question is, are people in your life important? Do they make a difference to how your life turns out, how you grow, who you become? And put a dash after that. And the real question is, are you careful about the people that you let into your life? Or do you, like me, just let everybody in and then wonder, why did that happen that way? Now, that's a big question for today.
That is a big question. I would say for myself personally, people are important. The people that I have let into my life or that I bring into my life and or actively keep in my life, which I think is probably the bigger thing, are very important to me. I've had friends that I have literally had, probably my best friend I've literally had since we were in 7th grade, which is a while ago. And I think that the type of people that you bring into your life, that you let into your life, speak to also who you are. It's an influence thing. And they influence what you do, certainly, and how you show up, but you also influence how they show up. And I guess, what is it that they say, that you are a vision, a representation of the people around you. So if you're an asshole, you should probably look around you, that you may have a lot of assholes in your life.
Exactly. And when I ask that question, I'm not just saying, are people important to you because you love them? Because you want to hold them close to your breast and because you don't want to be lonely. I'm really asking the question that says, are you strategic about the people who come into your life?
Not as strategic as I probably should be.
Yeah, that's where the conversation is going to go today, because we talk about people in the heroine's journey. It's important stuff on the heroine's journey, like the people that you let into your life. It's critical. Like your finances are critical, like your health is critical, like your self belief about yourself is critical. I found in my life that, oh my God, I had no criteria. I just let everybody come in because I wanted to be loved so much that if I just loved them and did enough for them, surely they were going to love me. And we were going to have this mutual admiration society, and it was all going to go swimmingly, except that it didn't.
Yeah. Well, I feel like you hit on a really essential point there of you desperately wanted these people in your life for any number of different reasons, and so you worked really hard to keep them in your life,
Uh-huh.
but they weren't necessarily working hard to stay in your life. And so when you started
Exactly.
to realize that
Mm-hmm.
it wasn't necessarily beneficial, or that they were really energy draining, so to speak,
Uh-huh. Yes,
and
yes.
you sort of let it drift or didn't like actively go, oh my God, no, you have to be in my life. I have to keep you here.
Mm-hmm.
It sort of naturally just parted.
Yeah, I call it, there are two kinds of people, sandwich makers and sandwich takers.
Yeah,
I don't know where I got the sandwich part, but to what you're saying, I was working harder at it than they were.
100%. I find that a lot too.
Uh-huh. And it's something that I have to acknowledge and be realistic about. And another thing that I noticed is because I wanted him in my life a lot, I didn't take the time to see them for who they really were.
Yeah.
I wanted to make up a story about who they should be or what they should become or whatever. And instead of looking directly at the situation and the reality of the situation and seeing any red flags that were possibly coming up, you know, I I wanted to make up my own reality, and that reality got me into trouble.
Yeah. Well, it's one of those times where you place on them the vision of who you want them to be, what you want them to be, how important you want them to be in your life, masking over like who they really are.
Yeah. Yeah.
What now? So when you realize those moments, or when you all of a sudden were like, oh, well, wait a second here, like
Hmm.
what caused you to like stop and step back and go, oh, is this really helpful? Like, is this really benefiting? Is this really building my life?
Yeah. Because sometimes I got caught on the other side. It was inconvenient to know who they were.
I love that word, inconvenient.
I do too. Because, you know, then they might not be able to do the things I wanted to do. Let's just make it really simple. I wanted them to love me sometimes, and sometimes they just weren't capable of it. But I went on assuming that they were capable of it. And if they, just had another day or, another energy shot or, another
Mm-hmm.
whatever, that they would suddenly rise to be where I needed them to be.
Yeah.
Because after all, I was doing things in my life. For instance, somebody supporting you is really important. But if it were somebody who didn't have that capability, but I glossed over it because I wanted him to have it, now we can start to see the circular pattern I was getting myself into that was just going nowhere and a no win.
Yeah. Did you find that you were putting the same kind of story on people, or the same masks on people, so that they would, to find the love or to get the love that you wanted or needed?
Uh-huh. Well, I'll tell you a funny story, and that's that I went to work on Wall Street
Mm-hmm.
in a very competitive testosterone driven world. And I have to tell you, it took me a couple of years to discover that I was not going to find anybody who loved me there. And later, I started laughing at it. I was like, on what planet did I think I was coming to Wall Street where I was actually going to find somebody who would love me? And and I'm not even talking about in the romantic sense because I didn't, I did
Mhm.
not find anybody there. It was the truth of it. But more importantly, even the people I worked with. And
Yeah.
so I had to acknowledge that that was not an environment where they were going to love me. And by the way, I better have my antenna up and watch my backside because that was more the reality than the one I was trying to create. So I was leaving myself so vulnerable.
Yeah. I feel
And,
like you could that the word love could be translated also into appreciate. So like in the scenario that you were just talking about, that the people around you would appreciate
uh-huh.
what you bring to the table, appreciate the work that you were doing and so forth. And I know certainly I've had that experience as well, where you want them so desperately to appreciate you, you like that you end up doing these crazy things and working these crazy hours and taking on these crazy responsibilities because it's just that next thing was what will tip the scale back so that they'll appreciate you, they'll love you, and value you, and
Yes.
it
Yes, I'm
doesn't work
using
that
love.
way.
Damn. Yes, I'm using love very broadly here. I'm
Mhm.
using it to say that you're happy and you're safe and you're comfortable and you can be yourself and you can laugh, and you can have good ideas and your ideas will be listened to.
Yeah.
I'm using it very broadly as something that includes me as a human being.
What, like that pesky detail, come on, don't let that get in the way.
Uh-huh. And I would say the next part is that not only was I, you know, overshadowing who they really were. But I didn't have any criteria either to be able to evaluate them.
Yeah.
And I think the third thing I didn't have is I didn't have the ability to walk away from them if it didn't work for me.
What do you mean by that?
If there was a situation where I was getting, um, let's just call it somebody who belittles you
Mhm.
or constantly tears you down, because my agenda was to stay there and be loved and be embraced as a human being. I also didn't have the facility to just look the situation in the eye, which I couldn't even see the situation, and say, this is not for me. Bye.
Now, it sounds like I'm parsing this down really, really carefully or in detail because I want to make a distinction between you, because you're saying I couldn't walk away, I couldn't leave. It wasn't necessarily that you couldn't leave because of financial reasons or that type
No,
of thing. It was because of your need or desire for them to love you and love what you were doing, within the environment.
uh-huh. Heroines, thanks for being with me. There's a really big idea that I want to tell you about, and that's the heroine's journey. Are you like worried or concerned about your life? I was. Has something big come along and just rocked you? Maybe thrown your apple cart straight up in the air. And when you ask yourself, are you really living the life of joy, prosperity, and freedom that you want to live? You know, life is for us to enjoy, not for us to suffer through. And that's what the heroine's journey is all about. It's your roadmap to a life that you love. You can have it. It's at theheroinesbook.com. I've written it for you. I can't wait for you to read it. And I'd love you to give me your feedback. And I've told many stories about my mother, and Bless her soul, she's no longer living, and neither is my father. And so I can tell these stories. I might be a little more guarded if I felt that she could tune into our podcast and actually listen.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe she can listen from heaven, so I should be concerned. But at this point, I feel like she's gotten enough perspective that she'll let us tell her stories so we can all learn from them.
Yeah.
And while I had two very smart, very capable, very talented parents, the truth was they didn't treat each other well. And my father picked on my mother all the time. And just what you said is why I have to circle back on this. My mother had her own businesses, did very well, sold her businesses eventually. But even though she was terribly uncomfortable with all this in this environment with my father, even though she'd made plenty of money, even though she even was living in a world where you could divorce at that point,
Mm-hmm.
she didn't. She took it on herself to stay and be essentially tortured by that behavior and didn't walk away from it.
Why do you think she made that choice?
I think it had to do with her own self-worth and security. I think, though, even though she made plenty of money to live for the rest of her life and that she had that option, I don't think she could acknowledge that option
Mm.
because she didn't have the very skills we're talking about. How to assess that it's not a good situation, how to walk away from a situation that isn't serving you, how to value yourself enough that you don't think you have to live for long, extended periods of time in an environment that can be brutal to you.
Yeah.
It might be the same, in a job where you just think you can't get another job, or you think, all bosses are going to be alike, or you think that your skills aren't transferable. Any number of reasons that you come up with that pin you, it's a story that pins you into that world or um, that day-to-day experience. That's painful.
Yeah. Do you think it's also a situation of like white noise, in so much as you're in that environment day after day, year after year, and at a certain point, what's happening is white noise. Like you don't even really notice it anymore because it has been so consistent and pervasive for so long
Uh-huh.
that it almost takes something to kick you awake again,
Uh-huh.
to remind you that the white noise that you're feeling, it's sort of the same thing like that happens with pain, where you're in chronic
Uh-huh.
pain or whatever. It becomes so routine that you don't think about it anymore, and it takes something to remind you that
Uh-huh.
there used to be a world where you didn't feel that pain or you didn't hear that white noise.
Or maybe there never was.
There also
So,
could be that world as well, unfortunately.
so what you know, what love is what you knew as a child.
You hope.
No, not necessarily. If you were beaten as a child.
Well, that's what I mean. Like you say, love you as a child, but that's unfortunately not necessarily a given that every child has that
Yes.
baseline even.
And that's what I'm saying is that you take that into adulthood and your baseline's too low
Right.
because you haven't had the experience that raises that. So you say, I know what it feels like to live in joy. I know what it feels like to wake up happy. I know what kind of an environment makes me productive.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I know what I need for me in order to thrive, grow, be inspired, be creative.
So if you are missing that vision, even if it is faint and from long ago, how do you find your own vision of that? because you don't have one.
Uh-huh. I would say that that exists within you.
Interesting.
So
Continue.
you have to go create an experience, whether it's taking time to go sit quietly in a garden or on the edge of the ocean or meditate or on a pew in a church. I mean, there's so many different ways. But you know that moment of stillness
Mm-hmm.
when you can finally, you might have to sit there for a while because it doesn't always happen in the first 10 or 15 minutes. You know, that's why I love meditation because it takes me into that space. But once you get in there, there's no one bitching at you or telling you you're not good enough or, you know, or brutalizing you or any number of those other things. There is that space within us that lets us sit in our wholeness.
So what I'm hearing you say is that that wholeness, that internal wholeness, every person, every woman has it in there, has an I don't even know what the word would be, but like has that energy, we'll call it, of
Uh-huh,
wholeness in them, regardless of what has happened in their life.
uh-huh. And it's all the other stuff that goes on around us, which in the end is all meaningless anyway, you know? When you die, none of that means anything. But in the meantime, it's very easy to get caught up in.
Mm-hmm.
But that space within us that can find out what is normal, what is life producing, what grows us. And sometimes, as we were saying in the beginning of the conversation, and those places that we just described, you have to get rid of some people in order to find that.
Yeah. You have to be okay with losing, I'm going to just call it baggage.
Yeah, because, you know, and I'll be more specific again here, and that's that the person we've been talking about my ex-husband, okay?
Okay. To be clear.
He was not kind, mean, didn't want me to succeed, didn't want to say anything good about me, you know. Those are enough adjectives that you just kind of get the picture. The point is, I tried to stay around it and stay around it and stay around it. And in some point, I had to call it.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's one of the difficulties with people in our lives is that while we'd love them for all to be great, to support us, to be kind, you know, to be generous, to see our best potential, you know, at some point there are people in your life where you have to call it.
In that situation, did you, because I don't remember, or maybe I don't even know who filed for divorce or whatever, but like who actually called it? Did you call it and just say, okay, line in the sand, we're making changes?
I'd say I wasn't a heroine then. That's been part of my heroining up process
Mm-hmm.
because no, I didn't. He was drinking too much. He was doing all kinds of things that were very impairing my life. You know, I thought terribly about myself. My self-worth was in the toilet.
Mm-hmm.
But I wanted him to be what I wanted him to be. I held on way too strongly to that.
Yeah.
And he just kept upping the ante of what he was going to do to persecute me. I mean, I don't know if you've heard this story, but he actually took the girlfriend scuba diving and put all the pictures out on the internet so everybody could see what a lovely time he was having with him. You know, and I only tell that story to really tell my story,
Mm-hmm.
which is that I had another expectation or a vision or something that I was holding on to so desperately that I could not let go of that situation in favor of making my life better. He left me.
And in the moment when he did that, I'm sure you were not thinking, oh, thank God. You were
No,
thinking, oh my God.
I was thinking I just died,
Yeah.
that my life was ruined, that I was wrecked. You know, I, now if I could go back and do it over, I would go to the refrigerator, get a bottle of champagne out, pop the cork, and celebrate. Because his leaving my life was the best thing that could have happened to me.
Yeah.
I couldn't even begin to see that in the moment. And the second part is that I was so willing to let myself be hurt and damaged
Mm-hmm.
that I'm like, where did that come from? Why
Yeah.
didn't I honor myself as a heroine and just say, no, wait a minute, you cannot be in my life if you can't be decent.
Yeah.
And I'm making the bar pretty low there where I just say decent, you know, where I don't feel harmed in your presence all the time.
Mm-hmm.
Because what I discovered is that there weren't just one of those people in my life, there were many of those people in my life because, as you were saying earlier, I was entirely comfortable to choose those people and I had no boundaries around, I had no gate.
Mm-hmm.
Like I opened the gate, but I was like all the illegals running over the border. There was no border to myself.
Mm-hmm.
I heard it a person say one time that you are a little bit like the property around your house. You have the right to protect that property.
Mm-hmm.
That I didn't have that concept.
Yeah.
And I would say that a lot of women don't have that concept.
True. And I also think that, and I don't remember if we've had this conversation, but I've certainly had this conversation with some friends of mine, that the energy that you put out, so in that situation, the energy that you were putting out into the world was attracting those type of people to you
I
because
think
they
so.
could feel that the boundaries were weak. They could feel that the
Uh-huh.
gate was open. They could feel that you would accept like
Uh-huh.
what they were shoveling essentially.
And they
um
came in and looted and
yeah,
pillaged and
but they
profited.
can feel that, like that energy that you give out, and they're
Uh-huh.
like, oh yeah, baby,
Uh-huh. Yes. And
come
all
to
the while,
mama.
exactly. And all the while I'm over here thinking I'm a smart, educated woman. Like I know things. I've been around the block.
Mm-hmm.
No, I didn't. No. People are capable of toppling your life,
Yeah.
of sending it right into the gutter, of smashing it to the point that you wonder if you can recover. And a lot of them, and this was another problem for me, I grew up in the Midwest where I just expected people to be good and kindly. No, no, no. There are people out in this world who, number one, may hurt you as a byproduct because they're an alcoholic or something like that. And number two, are just flat out to harm you.
Yeah.
I did not have that concept. In fact, some of them want to kill you. Like, what? And
Yep.
meanwhile, I'm being nice and trying to accommodate them and see that their lives are better and, and that they're happy and that they're going to grow and blossom and all that, because that's who I am. And in the meantime, they're out. They want to see me dead.
What's interesting, like, I wouldn't even go so far as they want to see you dead, because then you're not valuable to them. Like, they want to see you weak. They want to see you uncertain, scared, or whatever variation of that, because that's the reason that they were in your life, is because you were providing some sort of value to them. And
That's
it could have
right.
been so many different things, but like
Yeah,
they were getting something valuable from you. You weren't necessarily getting value back.
exactly. So one Saturday afternoon, I was driving up a major highway on my way to Costco. I was going to go buy some shelves for the garden shed at Costco. So I'm driving up the road, and I think what happened is I think I reached for my cell phone.
Okay.
All I can tell you is that something happened. That car, which was a big car, it was an MDX Acura, started rolling like one side to the other in the middle of Saturday afternoon on the freeway with lots of cars around me. I went in circles, took out a sign on the side of the highway and thought, we're gonna have to fix that. Went 30 feet down the thing, blew the whole car apart, all the airbags, everything. The good news, thank God, because my angels were definitely with me that day. I crawled out of the car, sat on the hood, and I didn't have a scratch.
That's insane. Amazing.
But here's the point of the story. I called the ex and said, I've just been in a car accident. Number one, he was furious that I'd damaged his car. That should tell you something. Number two, he was more concerned that he was about that than he was about me. And number three, when he finally got there and he stood way up on the hill and he looked down to where I was and the ambulance was arriving and, you know, this woman was screaming and all kinds of stuff, he didn't even come down. He stood at the top and took pictures. Okay. And he put the pictures on the internet so everybody could see them. Now, again, the reason I tell this story was how come I didn't have the capability inside me to want to be with somebody who would actually really care about me. What I got out of that day, I got a glimpse. We got to the hospital and the policeman came in and he said, you know, the last person who did that died.
Mm-hmm.
Well, first of all, he never even came into the emergency room. So what I got out of that day was he actually wanted me dead because then he would have gotten all the money.
Did you get it in that on that day, or did it take a while for it to sink in for you?
It actually, I think my angels were hard at work that day, and I think they were trying to wake me up
Okay.
because, as we know on the heroine's journey, everything works for your good, nothing works against you. All of life works for you. And I was intended to wake up that day, and kind of in a flash, I got this man doesn't care about me at all.
Mm-hmm.
You know, he's just happy. He would be happy to see me stay down at the bottom of the gutter. Like, what is up with this?
Yeah.
You know, and that was a radical experience that day. But I had certainly experienced that many other times, not only with him, but with other people,
Yeah.
because I didn't know how to value myself. And I do think the
Yeah.
people you attract has a lot to do with how you value yourself.
100%. It goes back, in my way of thinking, it goes back to that energy that you put out in the world and the energy that you attract back.
Uh-huh.
And you that energy that you're giving out can come from a place of value and significance and appreciation and all of that, or it can come from a place of need and scarcity and fear,
Desperation.
desperation.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think that, you know, looking back on it now, not even that I knew so much what to do at the time, but we talk about in the heroine's journey that what a heroine does is they claim their own self-worth. Because you can't begin to change any of that if you don't change your own self-worth.
Yeah. Or you don't change the or you don't flip the switch to feeling that you have even self-worth.
Exactly. Uh-huh. You know, I watched her for so many years in the story I told about my mother because I wanted to shake her and say, you're worthy. You're
Yeah.
so worthy. You know, you're kind, you're smart, but but as your worth goes down, you can't even see that in yourself. Which is why, You have to separate and go find those quiet moments where you can sit with yourself and separate it out and say, and maybe for me, it was waiting in the emergency room, for an hour or more when I did, when I really got that separation and that time to say, what is this?
Yeah.
You know, what is this? It wasn't too many weeks after that he ran off with a girlfriend, and which is a whole nother story. but but the point of it is that there is so much importance to keeping yourself in a circle of people that exhibit kindness,
Yeah.
concern, desire for you to grow, desire for you to get better, happiness, when something goes on in your life that's good. All those things, it's not attractive to think that's not important. To think, oh, well, I can do without that. No,
Yeah.
you can't. You're a human. You need that. You're like a flower that's a rose that's blooming, and you need some water in order to make sure that happens.
I do think that we as women tend to put our own self-worth, self-needs, self-time as the lowest thing on the priority list.
I totally agree with that.
And to going back to your point about the people in your life and the like the people that are trying to take from you versus the people who are there to help fill you up. Um, I I do feel like a lot of times we as women have not necessarily a martyr complex, but almost like we will change this person. We will help this person see the right path, make the right choice, do the right thing. And through that, they will then be better to me. They will
Exactly.
treat me better. They will love me because I have been able to do this thing for them.
Another way to say what you just said is that we feel like we have to go through other people to get what we need.
Yeah.
Like, let's change that paradigm. Like, maybe we should come to us for what we need.
I can validate that. I'm right behind that one.
Yeah. And I think another thing we don't get as women is who taught you discernment skills? Like, you can stay in my life and you can stay in my life, but you can't. And who taught you to have the voice to speak up in a way that you could communicate to that person? Nope, you can't stay. I didn't have that skill. I would have stayed with the ex-husband until I was dead.
Yeah.
Because there are people who want you dead, number one, and who will pummel you until there is, as you say, nothing left to take.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and if you're a woman, even though I thought I was a bold, opinionated, but I didn't have any more than my mother had. I did not have the ability to stand up and say, you cannot do this to me.
Yeah. Did when did you realize that you were basically doing essentially the same thing that your mother had done?
Um, for many years, in many different ways, I copied good things and I copied problems.
Mm-hmm.
I copied the treatment she got and got it again. And I didn't have any more skills to deal with it than she had. Which, by the way, let's sing from the rooftops, is the whole reason we're talking about the heroine's journey, because there's a whole process and methodology in here and journey. Whereas women, we start to learn to take care of ourselves in a way that we can then offer things to others. What a concept.
Yeah.
If you're broken and fearful and damaged and confused and all those things that the wrong people in your life can make you, how effective do you think you can be?
Not very. You
No.
are lost in the forest.
Yeah. Yeah. It's very difficult.
Yeah. And I'm assuming that in those moments that it got, I should say, easier to have that discernment about what people were actually lifting you up versus the people that were pushing or holding you down. And so it became easier to say, oh, yes, no, I don't even want a piece of that type of
Yeah,
thing.
right. Yeah. Hold that one off. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. It took some development of some skill to be able to speak up. Because I think being silent is what keeps you trapped.
Yeah. Being silent is easy.
Uh-huh. And not understanding that you're trying to make it up to work in your head when actually it's not working.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, that can be the story of the tale of relationships, friendships, work,
Uh-huh.
bosses, coworkers. I mean,
Uh-huh.
like it's the story of any relationship that we have with other people
Uh-huh.
and
And
however we find them.
with some discernment skills, you can get on it faster.
Yeah.
Because people who are not kind tend to be bullies. And if
True.
you back them up sooner rather than later, then they're likely to go pick on somebody else.
Yeah. Yeah. And so I'm assuming then that so you find yourself like having that discernment now, having that retrospective understanding and knowledge that you're able to like almost feel the dark energy coming and being like, just keep on going.
Just let it like a wind, let it blow by you. Uh-huh. Yeah. 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 And I want to say here, first of all, I want to say this is not the conversation that I thought we were going to have today. What I so love about
Welcome
our
to our conversations.
exactly what I so love is that I think it's Snoop Dogg on The Voice that keeps talking about the Holy Spirit coming in to help him. You know,
Yeah.
I think I think we let the Spirit come in because maybe there's somebody out there and you listening who really needed to hear this conversation today. And if that's the case, first of all, we send you our love and our support. And secondly, it's for you that we're doing this. So we're not
Yeah.
supposed to guide it. But it wasn't the conversation I thought we were going to have at all. That being said, I just want to remind you that so many of the answers and so many of the tools and the skills in what we're talking about today are found in the new book, The Heroine's Journey. Let's see if I can get it in the picture.
I think you need to get it in, kind of in front of you. Yeah, there we go.
Are found in The Heroine's Journey, which, by the way, is a masterpiece for me. When things aren't working, I go right back here and I ask it, like, what do you need to teach me? Because there's a whole lot of wisdom, not just because I wrote this book. Yes, I wrote this book, but I always feel when I write that it comes through me. So, and I want to invite you that if you that you can first of all go to heroinesbook.com and get your free copy, and it's free plus shipping right now. So instead of having to pay 20 $25 or something on Amazon, you can go to heroinesbook.com and get the book free plus shipping. And in addition to that, I want to remind you that because you will see it on the book funnel page, that we do something called a plump call, and it's your opportunity to talk directly to us, and we're here to help you figure out what your challenges are on the heroine's journey. So if you would like to do that, you can email support@walkthejourney.com, say that you heard it on our podcast and that you'd like to schedule a plum call to learn more. So please do all of that. In the meantime, journey onward. We're getting smarter and more capable and more loving as women. So journey onward.
That is this week's episode of The Heroine's Journey. You can access the blog post for this episode along with other great resources at walkthejourney.com. Also, get your free ebook at walkthejourney.com so you can say goodbye to just surviving and turn into thriving. Join us next week for another fun, inspiring, and uplifting episode. If you love this episode, feel free to subscribe and give us a review on iTunes. Stay in touch on other social media platforms, Instagram and our Facebook group, both at The Heroine's Journey LLC. Until next time.